Hey, thanks for joining us for this episode of the Gig Harbor Flycast, and super excited to have George Cook on. We just had an episode, and we just geeked out over space stuff, like big time geeked out over.
Nobody does that. Stop.
Ever. But today, for those of you that are listening in, sorry that you don't have the visual, but we're gonna talk about some new product and pretty excited about what's going on. So if you haven't subscribed to our YouTube channel, you should subscribe to our YouTube channel. There's a new rod from Sage that's coming out, and we're giving one away to one lucky angler on our YouTube page that subscribes. So check out the video for how to win that rod. But we're gonna dive into some new stuff. And first, Euro nymphing has really become popular in the West, and a couple of the guys here at the shop they don't do it a ton, but they do it a little bit, but they really like to trout fish. And so there's a new rod from Redington as well as a new reel from Sage that really are going to help anglers that are check nymphing, Euro nymphing. I mean, have we landed on like a term for this yet? I mean, I kind of hear people use it in a lot of different ways, and there used to be like differences between these different style of like tight line nymphing, but now I'm hearing people just using the terms completely.
Well, but they're all relevant, Blake. They're all relevant. I mean, years ago, I think most people in America heard about check nymphing originally, and it was largely getting spoken of, in the mode of the various tournaments.
Right.
Okay. Which the Europeans are huge on this, whether it's the Poles, the Czechs, the Spaniards, the French. That group is kind of, the founding fathers of check nymphing, which then got kind of posed into Euro nymph. And so I think in the U.S., the overall coverage name is Euro nymph, European style nymphing, Euro nymph, yada yada. But there's various subcultures.
Right.
You've got what the Italians are doing, the Spaniards, and so on and so forth. And there's all sorts of little variants, which is not unlike what we've talked about in spay casting. You've got Skagit, you've got Scandi, you've got mid belly, you got long belly. It's the same sort of thing.
Sure.
Different theater. There you are.
Yeah. Okay. So let's start with the rod. So tell us about this new rod, the Redington Strike.
Well, this is going to give Farbank, the company that holds the big cards, that being Sage, Rio, and Redington, along with Flywater Travel. In price point stuff, we're going to have the Strike. And the Strike is going to come, it's a price point rod, and it is going to hit the mark for entry level, but it's designed in such a way to really play this game in terms of rod action, with a key on sensitivity, a downlocking reel seat, which is pretty critical to get that weight to the back based on the way the methodology is executed, and looking at various factors in terms of fatigue and overall effectiveness. So we're going to have this in multiple models, and it's going to be led by a 10.5 foot 3-weight, which is really the bullseye length in Euro nymph, is 10.5 3-weight line. And when you say 3, it's all relevant because a Euro nymph line, which we have at Rio, including the little shorty, which is the little cheater that'll let you play.
Wait, so what do you mean by that? If people, because I am amazed by how many fly anglers, they're like, Euro nymph, I don't even know what you're talking about. I mean, there's still, even though there's a craze about it right now, there's still a lot of people that they're not on Instagram. They don't, or whatever. Sure. They just haven't heard about it. Yeah. So the Euro nymph shorty is a specific 20 line.
Foot. 20-foot chunk fly line. And in reality, it's a 20-foot chunk of the front end of a Euro nymph line, which is essentially a level animal, because when you're fishing these things, Blake, as you well know, and your staff knows, it's more often than not a point blank thing. What's point blank is closest from me to the wooden structure there, which is roughly, from my hand, that's roughly, 7 feet away. Your window is roughly 12 feet away.
So hero casters, might not really dig
stay in the bullpen. Stay in the bullpen. Because a long cast with these, I mean, really, what's a long cast is probably 45 feet.
Oh, wow.
But the effect, because the method does not lend itself to distance. It lends itself to point blank.
Right.
And if you said, okay, well, what's a reasonable expectation on range? Well, let's call it, basically the length of the rod. So let's call it, 7 to 9 feet in front of you.
Yeah.
To really super effective is, 30 feet in front of you. So it's point blank.
Right.
But this allows the method to work incredibly effective. A virtual vacuum, if you will.
So just putting that line on like your 9-foot 5 weight,
it allows you to go put your toes in the water.
Yeah, but it's not quite the same because the sensitivity of the rod tip is not quite like the Euro nymph rod, and you don't have the length necessarily that the rod
but just
has as
to wind her back in a sec, you're fishing very little fly line. In fact, in many cases, you're not fishing the fly line at all. And those fly lines oftentimes are barely out of the tip of the rod because you're fishing a very much longer leader, north of 20 feet overall length. And you're fishing because the method is basically a leader-based method. Okay, there's other factors in it, but the fly line is not the fly line of importance that it is in other fly fishing endeavors. Not at all. It's really part of a support system. You could, in fact, almost do it with just monofilament. But the fly line does have its part, and it acts that part very well, but in a limited.
And then you can still call it fly fishing then.
Well, it's Euro nymphing, and it's a different animal. I mean, spay is a different animal than single hand. Euro nymphing is most definitely a different animal, but it's another form of fly fishing. Yeah. It's a very effective one, and it's one that is largely caught initial fire in Utah and Colorado, but now it's as hot as a pistol in the state of Oregon, Montana. Certainly going on here. The Yakima to the east of us is a hotbed for it, and it's a very effective method of fishing.
It's the vacuum of the river.
No, you put on your Viking hat and get your vacuum, and everybody in the village is getting it. Yeah, truly. But these companies here in America, Farbank being absolute shining star, whether it's the Sage ESN rod, the new Strike from Redington, Rio's bringing the little shorty, the little guy that lets you put. The purpose of the shorty is to be able to take a conventional fly line on whatever fly reel you're rolling, put that on the end, and equate to that necessary terminal tackle. We also make a full Euro line, which lends itself to this large arbor reel we're going to talk about.
Yeah.
But Rio makes virtually all the key terminal tackle. And equipment-wise, it's basically one-stop shopping at Rio, including flies, Euro nymph flies, which are typically heavier, tungsten-based, jig hooks oftentimes, various and sundry things. But this is a hot angling topic in the country, and we're bringing more stuff to the table. The Strike will be a rod from Redington that's going to be available and rolling. But maybe the most interesting thing sitting here today.
Let's talk about the reel. So this is the new Sage ESN reel. And
ESN reel.
Yeah, we're holding it up, but for those of you that are just listening on audio, the reel, it has some similar styling to the Spectrum LT, which has a sealed drag system in it, really beautiful machined aluminum reel. But this new reel has a really really large arbor reel, really thin diameter. But then it also has something really unique where it comes with a set of weights that are on a ring that can be placed around the hub of the drag, to be able to weight the reel, especially towards the back of the rod or back of the reel. And so that way, because since your rod angle with the Euro nymph setup is not like just holding the rod straight out in front of you, a lot of times you're holding the rod up more to control your flies and your drift. And so this reel helps weight that longer 11-foot, 10.5-foot rod to be able to balance it out, so you have a much more comfortable drift. And I haven't seen any other reels that are really focused down like quite like this. And I mean,
it's a one of a kind.
Yeah.
And this reel is left-handed, set up for left-hand wind, and you'll notice that counterweight, this critter, I've got it kind of rooster-tailed out the back end, and I've done that because, and you can instantly feel it in this, is that suddenly that weight is being projected to the back, because when you're fishing these things, and granted I've just got the butt section, but you got 10.5 feet stretched out there, you've got to have a counterbalance to start with, okay? So weight in the reel is fundamentally good. Now, what this reel does is it solves multiple challenges posed by Czech nymphing, and that is that we've got this large arbor, and the real beauty of that large arbor, and you can see that is a large arbor of the first order. So when a fly line or a line is on any reel, whether it's a bait casting reel, spinning reel, fly reel, is that arbor narrows. And that line peels off that arbor, dropping from the very top to the very bottom. There's a torque factor, and the torque increases. So in other words, if it took, just to simplify, a scale of 1 to 10, if 1 is the easiest pull off this thing and 10 is the hardest, we basically go from 1 to 10 at the bottom, okay? So in that idea here, by placing this arbor as far out there is limited to no torque in that setup as we go about things here. So I'm going to take this off so we can really talk about it. So most Czech nymphing, Euro nymphing, is being done with lighter tippets. 4X would be considered more often than not fairly heavy. 5, 6, 7X is pretty common. So we're fishing. We stick a fish. It's a nice one, 14-inch rainbow. We stick him. He takes off. We want little to no startup inertia. In other words, when this thing comes tight and begins to peel line, we want that number one, that no hard torque. And we're going to get that in here. In fact, the torque drop from top to bottom on my little scale of 10 is a 1 to 2 in that range. It's only 1 to 2. So that's going to protect that tippet on that fish that races off. Elimination, virtual total deduction of startup inertia. So that's going on here. Where this reel gets interesting is we unscrew the knob, which is going to pull our spool off. Okay. Now you can really see that large arbor, right? You've got this counterweight going on. Okay. So all I have to do is unscrew this critter. I'm going to pull him off. Okay. And to just unwind him a little bit more. There she is, right? There's your counterweight. Now, when you get this reel, it's going to have a spacer. And pull that spacer out. Because if you do what I did the very first time and you throw the weight in with the spacer, put your reel together, your reel's going to act broken because it's fundamentally
Yeah,
out
it's
of
good
it.
to know. I'd probably put it in a clamp and like.
Oh yeah, I threw this.
Take a mallet to it and.
Yeah, I threw it right on top of the spacer, and I was
Yeah.
like, oh yeah, it's all set up well.
Yeah, and then after the mallet, then I'd call Sage about warranty.
Right, go, hey man,
something's wrong with the reel. Yeah.
Take the spacer out, put it in the handy little carrying case.
Wait, let me see it. I didn't actually get to see these things. Okay.
You've got a light guy. You got Mr. Medium.
And they actually print they print
the weight's right on there.
Weight on it.
Yeah, the
half
weight's
of an
right
ounce.
on there.
Okay.
Yeah. Here's your big guy.
There's the big one. 1.5 ounce,
Yep.
and then this is a 1.
That's your biggie.
Yeah.
So, left-hand reel, so it's going to be facing that way. I can take this thing, Blake, and I can set it within that octangle. I can set it wherever I want.
Mm-hmm.
I can go straight north, straight south. I can go west or east. And what I'm going to do based on where I want this balance is I'm either going to run this thing, as I like to say, out the east, or I'm going to do a little cutesy rooster tail move. And I'm going to put him, I got to get him to about right there. So I've got him kind of coming, you can see that on camera.
Yeah.
I got the little rooster tail going, right? But that's all part of. Do you like that? The mariners are searching for hands like that. Quick catch.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna put her back. Yada yada. Notice I don't have that spacer in there. Keep that spacer out. I got her set. Left hand wind, rooster tail coming out the back. So in theory, this is going to set up like that. It's putting the weight where I want it.
Right.
Comfortable, efficient weight distribution in a Euro-style nymphing rod outfit.
Cool.
But I've got options in terms of weight. I can customize this thing. I can do what I want.
Yeah.
Okay. Because there's been some crazy stuff going on. You're seeing guys putting baling wire, wrapping it around whatever part of the reel they could.
Yeah.
I've seen guys take pencil lead and try to roll it onto the reel seat just to get more weight back here to get this thing going. So the ESN reel from Sage, one size, 2 colors, stealth black and chipotle, and that particular one is a gorgeous matchup with the Sage ESN rod. Okay? Including the 3106 ESN, or as I call it, the stethoscope, because nothing gets missed.
Okay, so and then quickly, just another, because we want to get into
story time.
Well, we want to get into story time, and then we got the big announcement.
Greenie over there.
But to quickly point out that there's also a new reel from Redington called the Run, and it's really similar style to the Rise, but it has a cast construction to it and lowers the cost quite a bit. And so it starts at $109, and I think this is going to be a great budget reel for anglers starting off. And I'm holding right here the 3/4 size, and it's a great little size that I think will be great.
That's a little guy.
Yeah,
that'll go on a 2/8, 3/8, short 4/8. You're going to see this reel, the Run, in 3 colors, in 3 sizes, and they're going to be trout. A little bit of steelhead game, steelhead light salmon, think silvers, pinks.
Yeah.
3/4, a 5/6, 7/8. There won't be a 9/10. Grab that Rise that's over there. This is a new Rise color called Rose Gold. And these spools in the respective sizes become an economical interchangeable fit with the Rise. So I could put a 3/4 spool from the Run in the Rise, so on and so forth. And for a lake fisherman, who's playing a bunch of different sinking lines, this may become a really nice little arrangement set in it. And there'll be 3 colors in this, 3 sizes, $109. It's absolutely a value proposition. We've got another reel at Redington that you sell pretty fluently called the Behemoth, and this is going to kind of come in alongside that as a price point opportunity. The Behemoth finds its way in the 7/8, largely the 9/10 on spay rods, and this is going to be a nice freshwater trout price point offering.
Okay, so George, before we jump into the big Sage announcement, the panther. Let's talk a little bit about the panther. So you have the largest cat.
I have what I like to proclaim is the largest cat in captivity. That's captivity.
It's big. So
he's the 907 panther. Well, he's very popular on my Instagram on State of Spay.
Well, I was almost wondering
he's the main guy.
when the panther was going to get his own Instagram account.
Well, he's too valuable to mine to unleash him upon his own. So here he is. Here he is. Yeah, there you go, folks. That's the panther.
For those on audio, you got to follow George on Instagram.
Yeah,
State of
Spay, and then at Mule Deer 16 for the hunters. But I posted this on Instagram last year, and it's all in the verbiage, right? It says 907 Mega Panther. I recently posted this at Mule Deer 16, my hunting Instagram. Many people ask, what kind of cat is that? The answer, panther. Yeah, panther. Mega big power panther, largest cat in captivity. The panther lives in Anchorage. He oftentimes goes outside. He has to face things of the Alaskan wilderness that are found in South Anchorage. We've got Moosey. We've got Boo Boo.
Yeah.
We've got two versions of Boo Boo. We got black Boo Boo and brown Boo Boo.
Yeah.
And then we've got this thing in the wintertime that's been on our deck twice this last winter called Lynxie. Oh. And Lynx, as I tell the Power Panther, be careful out there. It's wild. You might not make it home. So obey your cat mom and stay out of them there woods.
Yeah.
Because the hunter-killer is not far. Yeah, we love the panther. So he's the main guy.
Has the panther, has it hunted anything down?
Yeah, the panther.
Bunnies or anything?
No, he's not on the 12-month, the 365 murder spree that Lynxie's on.
Okay.
But, he occasionally will drag something up. But due to his, near buffalo size,
yeah,
he's not quite as swift as, say, a 9-pound female mini panther is a lot quicker critter than he is. But I've watched him chase voles in the backyard, and old vole tends to get away.
I got a new lab. She's right now she's 7 months old. Her name's Whiskey. It was a compromise name because I wanted to name her Beer Can, but my wife was
two
not
syllables like
was
black
not gonna go for it. But this dog is pretty remarkable because she likes to hunt things and she can stalk and crawl like a panther. It's my kids love it. They crack up when she does it, but she is really quiet and she will try to get as close as possible to whatever she's gonna pounce on, and she's got
whole new meaning of cat dog.
She's pretty crazy. It's pretty awesome.
Right on.
So.
Yeah, the panther's the main guy. And he's a mama's boy.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. All 20-plus pounds of him. He's a mama's boy. Yeah.
Okay, so new Sage rod is coming out, and we're actually, it's probably coming out,
shortly.
Maybe it came out yesterday or today. That's when this is launching.
Well,
yeah. So if you want a free one, not you, George, but somebody else, someone listening in, if you want one, go to our YouTube channel, and we are giving away a new Sage Sonic, and
winner's choice, I believe.
Winner's choice, yeah. It comes in a 3 through 8 weight, and but let's talk about this rod. And but first, okay, do you have any nicknames for this rod? Yeah, because you always have nicknames for Sage rods.
Well, I think the name Sonic. I mean, we beat the Sonics back to town. We're first. We don't even need to figure out a stadium to play in.
Oh man,
we are back first.
I think that probably made a few people cry. Just
but it's green.
Yeah, it is. It is green.
It's the second coming, but they'll be back. Don't worry. Well, Blake, as you know, we brought out the Maverick.
Yep.
In mid-January, and you guys cast, if I recall right, we had a 690, we had the Teacher's Pet 790 Maverick, and the 890, and you guys have cast them all and sold several. I believe you actually got a 790.
Yeah, took it to Cuba.
Took to Cuba.
Awesome.
And the Maverick at 550 rods, at $550, pardon me, kinetic storyline, absolute value proposition in today's fly rods.
Yeah.
Sage has brought, the best of technology into a price point form that should be available and affordable by anglers everywhere. And what the Sonic is bringing to the table is your all-water, freshwater rendition of that sort of price point. At sub $600, you'll have 3 weights through 8. You'll have some of the usual suspects that you're looking for, 9.5 foot 5 weight, 5.96, the vaunted 6.97, which is your beach, weapon of choice. I recently fished an 8100, swinging some big sink tips for outsized rainbows here in the lower 48. So we're going to have all the models that you would expect to see in an all-water line, and at a sub $600 price point, coupled with the technology, the kinetic story from Sage, which has trickled down into these, just like the Maverick, you've got a tremendous performance. You've got where value and performance literally are meeting on the curve.
Yeah, so the kinetic technology that was first introduced in the Sage 1.
2010.
And, some anglers, it's still their favorite rod. And so I think, for people that love the Sage 1, I think that they won't be disappointed when they see just how beautiful the new Sonic is, as well as just its performance. And today we cast a couple different lines. We threw the Rio Perception on the 6 weight, the 690. Did we throw it on anything else? I'm trying to remember.
We threw the Perception on a new Redington rod called the Trace, but we largely threw Rio Gold, which was your star on your 590.
Oh yeah, it was killer.
We had the Technical Trout that we played on the 490 Sonic, the 690 Sonic. Very delightful on that 690. Just a lovely combination. But I think in terms of freshwater floating lines on these rods, there's going to be a wide array of possibilities.
Yeah.
I think on 3, 4, 5 weights, the Gold is going to be the preemptive choice. If you're looking for a little more load in the rod, you're looking for a little more parabolic, deeper loading, it'll be a Grand. I think in a lot of trout fishing scenarios, particularly with the 490, the straight 590, the 690, the Technical Trout is a lovely choice. That's an angler's line.
We put that on the
angler's line.
That was on the 4 weight that we
put
threw
it on the 4 and the
was
straight 6.
Yeah, it was nice.
We let the Wadeford 5 Gold star on the 5, which it clearly did. And then, for you are the gateway to Puget Sound in all its lovely fishing, both beach and boat. The Outbound Short is a mainstay line for you guys.
Yeah.
The Camo Lux is kind of a sneaky one that also plays in lakes, along with the Aqualux.
Coastal Quick Shooter.
Quick Shooter. Yeah, that's a very popular one.
On that 697, that thing's
it's gonna be a cannon.
Yeah.
Just hold on, put a firm grip on that cord. Okay.
Yeah. So the rod's available now. So by the time this podcast launches, we're going to be. So we're recording it right now during the coronavirus shutdown, and during the we're social distancing here. So
I need you far away.
We need to lean back a little bit, but But so, production up on Bainbridge, I mean, these Sage rods, they're not made overseas. They're made right here in Washington. And so they had to shut down production for 2 weeks. But they've been building them. So when this podcast finally airs, the rods are available. We will have them here at the store, available for purchase. And it's pretty amazing that, that with a couple mid-price entry rods with Sage, the Maverick that came out in January, the Sonic that's now out, just in spite of everything that's going on, means a lot of bang for the buck with both of those rod families. And I think for anglers that are ready to get out of the house and get out and go fish, especially anglers that want to stick a little bit closer to home, and Puget Sound beaches are, sometimes a 10 or 20 minute drive from their house, maybe 25-minute drive from their house. A 697 Sonic is going to be, loaded up with a coastal quick shooter is going to be
cash money.
It's going to be cash money. So
cash money.
And I mean, geez, and if that check comes through from President Trump, they could buy 2 of them. They get 2 of them and 2 lines.
I'm going to tell you something. There's going to be some rods, some golf clubs, and some new bows getting bought out there. It's going to be an outdoor stimulus plan. Yep. But all joking aside, all rods from Sage are made in America. We've got a little something that signifies that. Even the price point rods are built here, right up on Bainbridge, by skilled American craftsmen. And that's the hallmark of Sage, is American-made rods. It's always been that way. It'll always be that way. And the Sonic is the latest addition to, what is a great fly rod heritage here in Washington State.
Awesome. Well, I'm planning on picking up at least one.
Oh, yeah.
Hey, so quick question for you that we had on the list that we didn't get to in our last episode, but because we were talking about like history of like spey casting and rods and stuff like that. So, I mean, you've been the Sage rep for how many years now?
1990.
1990. A couple. It's been a couple.
That's 30 if math serves me right.
Sage has had a lot of different rods out in the 30 years. Do you have a favorite? I mean, when it comes to like single hand rods, I mean, I know you got piles of them at home. What's one that you're like, God, I love this rod and I'm never getting rid of it?
Hard to nail it to one. Like, okay, well, maybe easy to nail it to vintage or a given decade. Okay. That one's easier to do. I can go back lots of different animals, the RPL Plus, which is one of yesteryear.
Yeah.
I was a huge fan of the 696 and the 790. Stuff of more recent vintage. You think about Z-Axis 9100. Caught a big rainbow last week on a 9100. And I wanted that rod not because of any sort of, return to Renaissance, but rather the line I was fishing, which was a 350 grain striper sink tip, is aimed at a 9-weight. It's a 9-weight line. And, I had a choice of a 990 Maverick, 990 Igniter, excellent choices. But I reached into the old school quiver for a 9100 XP, so I think you could throw that one in there. And then in two-handers, a couple that come to mind are a Z-Axis 7136 and an 8129. Those are some true oldies but goodies. And then in the one, I mean, this could be an episode, dude. I mean, a 7116 1 switch rod, baby spey.
Yeah.
That one's right in there too, as well as the 4116. Better stop me. This will go on and on and on.
Well, I mean, I guess it's probably hard to even to narrow it down because, even though you're in these parts of the world known as a spey guy, but when you and I talk, I mean, we rarely talk about spey. I mean, we talk a lot about just trout fishing. I mean, you tell me tons of stories about New Zealand and, Alaska stuff. And, I mean, we talk a lot about saltwater and, I mean, recently we've been talking about Guatemala and sailfish, et cetera, on the fly. But bass. Let's talk a little bit about bass.
I love bassy.
Yeah, I mean,
me and bassy are tight.
So have you been into bass fishing? I mean, because you started trout.
With a fly I did, but I started fishing.
Yeah, with conventional tackle
in Texas, with a good old Zebco, giving it to bassy and bluegill. They were the main guys on the hit list.
Do you think that's going to be kind of the new frontier in Washington for fly anglers, considering where the state of steelhead and salmon currently are?
Well, those things will always have their seasonal appeal, right?
Yeah.
We just finished last year we had a drought and we had funky water. This year we had front end heavy water, but then she cleared and steelhead was pretty good pursuant to what was open.
Sure.
And this applies to both coastal Oregon and coastal Washington. Those things will always have their appeal. And while those runs are, depleted or stressed, there are places where there are bright spots, and they'll always have their appeal in a seasonal approach. Puget Sound and all the varied options there as well as anybody.
Yeah.
And you're certainly going to have your places and times and targets. But trout is king. Right. Trout started off as king. Trout's king.
Yeah.
Tackle from all manufacturers reflects the fact that trout is king.
Isn't it something like 85%? Or I heard someone throw out a statistic about the industry and how much was run by trout, driven by trout.
It's at least 85, if not 90.
I mean, it was staggering.
But there's tons of things out there, right?
Yeah.
Just in the last 12 months, I did a New Zealand trip. I did fishing that was largely based around bow hunting. Guatemala, which I've done a couple years in a row. Louisiana, the big redfish of the fall, winter. And just recently came back from Mexico, bass fishing El Salto and one of its sister lakes. I like bassy.
Yeah.
Why do I like bassy? Bassy participates. And participation, it turns out matters. That's why I like redfish. It's not one of those psycho saltwater fish that don't want to eat. Redfish like to eat. They like to eat. Okay. Yeah. And bassy likes to eat. And the beauty of bassy is that, whether it's Mexico or Texas or, Southern California, Florida, what have you, the golf courses of South Carolina, Disney in Florida. And yes, I did. And yes, I got kicked off. And I did some damage before I got thrown off. It's a great story. You have to ask me that one sometime because it's a great one. Bass is as made for fly as trout is.
Yeah.
And that applies to popper fishing, which generally is an early or late in the day sort of thing, or fishing wet flies, leeches, lead-eye, leech-type flies. All sorts of things work. And bassy eats. And big bassy eats relatively small flies. We don't have to fish, full-on salamander imitations on fly to catch bassy.
Yeah.
That certainly will work.
Sure.
And that will have its day in court. But we can fish some stuff that's, in that 2 to 3.5 inch category that can be easily fished on 6 weights and 7s, 8 by default if you want to cover that.
So, rod-wise, gear-wise, you just got back from an incredible trip down fishing bass in Mexico. What rods were you guys fishing mostly down there?
Well, my wife, the popper queen, Jen, I mean, she lives to throw poppers. Visual really makes it for her, whether it's dry fly fishing for grayling in Alaska or that sort of thing. We found that 6 and 7 weights really, really are the bullseye for bass, in part because they throw those flies, and they'll throw a little outsize.
Yeah.
And one of my largest bass in the history of my career, I've got a 10, I've got a 9-pounder. I caught that 9-pounder years ago on a 690 RPL. So, it's all relevant. But the 690 Maverick, the 790 Maverick, and that wonderful rod that we brought out last summer called the Payload. The Payload 689 was absolutely fantastic. as a bass rod, particularly with an outbound short, weight forward 6, outbound short on that rod was just fabulous. I think a 789 payload is probably as big as most people need for bass. The 889 payload is the top end of the largemouth, but getting more into the peacock or golden dorado game.
Okay.
You know, but you can kind of see where this is going. I think the fun factor really centers on 6 and 7s is where the fun factor really settles on bass. And bass are everywhere. I mean, outside of Alaska, bass are everywhere. I mean, we've got some quality bass fishing here in the state of Washington, be it largemouth, be it smallmouth in particular. Ditto for Oregon. You know, California has got some world-class largemouth fishing. States like Florida, Texas, Alabama, Oklahoma, they all come to mind. But bass fishing can be for everybody, and not only everybody can do it, they can do it with reasonable expectations of good success, if not outright high success. And carp are another one of these species that I think is going to be on the upswing.
Yeah.
And here in Washington, we've got the tiger muskie game. Generally requires a boat, but that's another one that's, you know, on the hit list here in Washington State.
So I talk with anglers in the shop often about bass, and I bring that up because we have a lot of lakes in our area, and every single one of them has bass in them, you know, even if they stock them with trout. And I mean, I give people a piece of advice, and I'm curious to hear what you think about this, because like I grew up bass fishing. I mean, I grew up fishing farm ponds in Northern California, and man, I mean, but it was all
Texas,
all conventional tackle stuff, and I got it dialed in. I mean, I was pretty wicked with conventional tackle stuff, you know, fishing, all sorts of stuff. So anyways,
child unleashed.
I see bass guys out on some of our local lakes, the larger lakes, and if the lake allows motors and the bass boats show up to fish those places, you know, these guys have side scan fish finders with, you know, they have their trolling motors, and they can make pinpointed casts throwing a pig and jig or whatever they're doing, you know. I mean, and so a lot of times I'll tell people, I'll say, hey, fish the lakes where you can't have internal combustion motors, engines on them, because the guys that are really good at bass fishing, they pound all the lakes that, you know, where they can just back their, you know, their Ranger boat down in and go beat it up. And it's just one of those things where, like, a lot of those smaller lakes where it's just like personal watercraft, and you know, so you're fishing a kayak, a float tube, whatever. The bass are a whole lot more dumb. Like, so if you're a new fly angler, you know, casting flies for bass at lily pads and stuff like that, the chances that you're going to get into some actually nice fish. In a smaller lake, you're not going to find huge bass like you would or large. We don't have huge bass here necessarily, but larger bass usually are in larger lakes where there's more food sources, etc. But it just seems like you find more willing fish that see less pressure in some of those smaller lakes. So like the lakes that you're fishing on in Mexico, those are huge lakes.
Yeah.
Is there do a lot of people fish them, or, I mean, how did you feel like the fish were pressured? Well, first, what do you think about my advice to anglers about finding like smaller lakes when it comes to bass fishing?
Well, I think that's sound advice, Blake. But I would say certainly that could be on the radar, is target those first, but target opportunity, right? If you got a lake that you know has got bass in it, and you know you've got that 690 rod or that 697 that you've been plying the beach with, come get some flies, and go give it a go. And it doesn't require a boat. I mean, all my bass fishing as a youth with a fly rod, Texas, Oklahoma, Washington State, South Carolina, I did all of this stuff off the bank. And if I could simply get in somewhere and operate, I was good to go. Yes, a float tube, opened up some avenues.
Sure.
This kayak game that you guys are so well versed in, this is a mainstay format of bass fishing all over the U.S.
Oh, yeah.
Conventional or fly. In particular, the conventional crowd doing that in the South and Southeast is huge. So, but bass are going to be a target of opportunity. Focus your time early, focus your time late.
Yeah.
You know, what's early? Daylight to 10:30 in the morning. Evening, let's call it 5:30 to dark. Those are prime times. Those are prime time with all game fish, right? But those are super prime time with bass, be it largemouth, smallmouth. And you will have great success in those two periods, particularly if you're like my wife, the popper queen, and you're determined to watch popper get clobbered. That's when popper's going to be at a premium. And it's not that you can't catch them during the day, but typically what's going to happen during the day, and let's call during the day 11 to 4, is that your size is coming down. The little guys are more apt to take on the apex predator role because the big ones have fed, and they're going to wait for those optimum, feeding periods, which, again, early, late. You're going to catch smaller ones, and you're going to catch less. It doesn't mean you couldn't pull a big boy.
Right.
But, be smart about it and go take on the watersheds that you either have access to.
Right.
Or that you're familiar with, or that you're just straight up confident in. It could be, I know you got bass lakes within 10 minutes of where you and I are sitting.
Oh, yeah.
And then you've got the potholes in Moses Lake over yonder, and you've got the stuff in North Idaho on top of that.
Yeah.
In North Idaho, it's a real sleeper as it relates to smallmouth, some largemouth, and a whole bunch of pike. So there's, we've got fisheries within, a half a day's drive of where we're sitting that are beyond the trout steelhead theater, and it all represents opportunity. And as one will find, a good day of bass fishing is just plain fun. There's some real giggles and grins going to go on.
So there's a guy here that works at our shop he loves fishing bass. He loves tying bass stuff, and he just walked in the door. I think he heard us talking about bass. He's waving from the fly tying area. Dave's over there, and I think we called him in with our
bass call.
Bass call.
Yeah, splash, splash, popper, popper. Yeah, he's lurking behind me. Well, I'm a big bass fan, but I'm a fan of all fly fishing.
Yeah.
I mean, I landed 2 marlin last year on a fly. I landed a huge rainbow last week, a lifetime fish. If they eat a fly, they eat a fly. If they eat a fly, I'm in. Let's go.
Yeah.
And there's so much opportunity here in Washington State, here on the West Coast, the Rocky Mountains to the east of us, and the saltwater horizons. I mean, you've been to Cuba, 3 times? There's a ton of stuff out there, and it's all fly eligible.
Yeah.
Let's go get it.
Yeah. Hey, I'm going to give you the last word with that. So hope you guys are getting out and going fishing. Make sure you check out the new Sage Sonic. Check out our YouTube channel with your opportunity to win one, or visit our website to be able to buy your own. We would love to sell you.
Oh, you'll sell some.
Yeah,
you're good at it.
Sell your rod. So thanks for joining us on this episode of the Gig Harbor Flycast, and remember to subscribe so that you're getting all the updates when new stuff gets posted on Mondays. And thanks for joining us. We'll see you out on the water.